Well, turning now to the protests we've been seeing across universities in the United States against Israel's war on Gaza. Police have removed tents from the Palestinian Solidarity Encampment at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. Let's take a look. As you see there, police moved in on that camp where protesters had been based for some 5 days. Now, earlier in the week, university officials had permitted the students to hold a demonstration on the condition that they did not put up tents or use loudspeakers. Well, let's speak to Teresa. She's across this student movement for us from New York. Teresa, it looked like it got a little messy in Charlottesville. Can you talk us through what happened there between police and the students?
Well, correct. What happened in University of Virginia is basically what we've been seeing happening elsewhere all across the country, with students starting to protest and then setting up encampments, and then those encampments being removed by force by the police. In this case in particular, it's been several days since students were protesting in the university. They had several demands, among them, for example, which is divestment from companies that students believe are profiting from the war. This is not, in a way, what they're demanding. They're saying that this is something that happened during the anti-apartheid movement, for example, and that it was carried out by many universities in the United States, and that's why their demand is a legitimate one. So the university said that they were not going to meet these demands, and that's when they set up an encampment. And early this Saturday morning, the police arrived, state troopers arrived. They said that they had to remove the encampment. There were around 20 students, but then the group became much larger. There were some confrontations. The police started using tear gas, pepper spray, and we saw how several students were dragged out from the campus, university campus, and detained. And that's what we've been seeing happening all across New York City and in several other parts of the country. You know, students are convinced that they're fighting for justice, that they are in this civil rights movement, in a way, defending a just cause, comparing it to what happened during the Vietnam War, when students protesting against the war, against apartheid, among many other things. And that's why many are saying that they'll go back, that they'll continue protesting until this war is over.
Teresa, as you say, there have been confrontations and many arrests, too, in New York, where you are. I know you've been speaking to students there. It certainly sounds like there's an air of defiance. You expect this to continue even into the summer beyond graduations?
We're going to have to see what happens. What I can tell you is that on Friday, where I am standing right now, which is the new school in lower New York City, at least 27 people were detained here. On the building right in front of where I am, 20 people were detained. And even though they were taken to a police station, later on many were released. They are being charged with misdemeanor, for example. Again, the students took to the streets to protest across New York City. There were hundreds of people that gathered there to demand an end to the war in Gaza, to demand a ceasefire, to demand that the universities divest from Israel. So certainly it is a moment in time of regrouping, in a way, of finding how they're going to continue with this movement. Let's not forget that thousands of students have been detained. Many of them are right now dealing with a legal situation. We know that, for example, in many universities across the country, law students are assisting their other students that have been detained. So there's a whole movement around what is happening in the country right now. We're going to have to see how here in New York City the situation continues. But the students that we have spoken to are telling me that they'll be on the streets once again.
Teresa, covering that student movement for us from New York. Thank you very much, Teresa. Well, students at the University of California in Irvine say that they will remain on their campus until all their demands are met. Protesters are demanding that their university divest from businesses, as Teresa was describing, with ties to Israeli and weapons manufacturers. University officials say they'll continue to negotiate with students and that they're optimistic that they'll reach a deal soon. Well, let's bring in our correspondent, Gabriel Elizondo. He joins us now live from that campus there in Irvine. Gabe, I can see from, well, just behind you that the encampment is very much still standing. So those talks are ongoing, but the students are standing strong.
There are several dozen protesters here at this encampment that you see behind me. It's day 6. and they are negotiating with the university administrators over several rounds of talks about trying to meet these student protesters' demands, one of which, among many, or several, I should say, is full divestment of any companies that this university deals with that has any business dealings with Israel, of course. So there are negotiations going on, not today, but they're going to meet perhaps again as early as Monday. And the protesters here are hopeful that they could reach some sort of agreement. Clearly, the pressure seems to be working. And when I say pressure, I mean the pressure of this encampment. Everything is very peaceful here. There's actually families that have come out here with children that are going into the encampment, taking part in lectures and paintings. And you see elderly people here as well. It's all very, very peaceful. And we're seeing scenes that are much different than what we're seeing in Virginia on Saturday, where riot police confronted protesters. Here, actually, there was one agitator a couple hours ago that showed up here and that was taking video of some of the protesters without their permission. He was a clear agitator. Actually, a campus police officer came in, said, "Please stop," and escorted him away, de-escalating the situation. So that is an example of here, at least here in that one example of de-escalation. No real police presence here at all. It's not really needed, and for the most part, and that's why things here are moving along for the most part, as when I talk to the protesters, very well, as this encampment will continue, they say, until their demands are fully met.
Gabe, I can see some balloons floating in the air there behind you. As you say, it's incredibly different between what's happening there and other campuses like the University of Virginia, but certainly very different to what took place at UCLA, which was not all that far away. This is the same university, a different campus, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it really shows you how the administrators of each university really have a choice. They have a choice to either escalate and call in police and be confrontational, or they have a choice to actually listen, to come to these encampments, listen to what these young people, as well as professors, as I should point out, are taking part in this as well. It's not just students. It's primarily students, but it's also alumni. It's professors as well. And actually listen to what their concerns are, listen to what their demands are to try to reach some sort of agreement and de-escalate the situation. And that's what you're clearly seeing here. But this is pretty much the exception, not the rule. Of course, because as we see on our TV screens and from coverage from our colleagues all over the United States in the last several days, many universities are taking a much more confrontational approach, which quite frankly is unfortunate. But one of the protesters I spoke to here said she hopes that this is an example of what can be achieved. Perhaps. Again, they're still negotiating, so we're not there yet, but at least there is some discussion going on.
And we'll stay across that for you here on Al Jazeera. For now, Gabriel Elizondo there, and at the campus of University of California at Irvine. Thank you for that update, Gabriel.